hot take, Tulane takes the next steps and they make it to the college football playoffs. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a hot take or what?
If I said yes, it would be. Do I think it happens? No. Why? I'm going to give you a couple stats here, Christian. You're going to like this and appreciate it a ton. I did my homework, buddy. What were they, 12-2 last year? Knocked off USC, Jesus, excuse me, in the Cotton Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Big upset, right? I mean, probably had what, biggest win, school history, I'm assuming, on a national landscape. Would you agree?
100%.
Okay. Here's the problem. They were 2-10 the year before that. I believe they were almost 500 the year before that. They've had the same coach, Willie Fritz, I believe is his name. He is coming back, which I do give the guy a ton of props for coming back in today's coaching era where guys jump ship after one great year, right? We could name coach after coach after coach after coach on that shit. You know, Tulane is not a big name school. You know, I'm sure he got offers from other programs in the Power 5 that could pay him shit ton more money than what he was making, right? But I love the loyalty, and that's one thing I do love about that. I do hope they're successful this year. I don't think they're going to be terrible. No, did pull up their schedule earlier. I don't know a ton about the American Conference, but I mean, they did. I believe Cincinnati is in that conference. Who the hell's the other team that kind of dominates or runs that thing? That's up there too. I think it's maybe Central Florida. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
yep.
You know, I believe they're bringing their quarterback. What's his name? Mike Pratt, I think, bringing him back for another year. You know, in the win over USC last year was awesome. I watched that whole game, man. I'm not a USC guy, but man, that was so happy to see the underdog win, right? And that was huge. But to answer your question, I'm actually going to ask you a question. What conference, since you are a stat whore, what Power 5 conference was Tulane in at one time? Give me this one. I'm going to put you on the spot here, brother.
What Power 5 conference?
You're Googling that shit right now. Don't act like you're
okay. I haven't looked it up. What Power 5 conference was Tulane in at one point?
Yes.
What years are we talking about here?
We're talking about in the 60s when I was born, as you say.
Oh, Lord. I'm guessing. Okay, I'm just guessing. Was it the SEC?
This fucking guy, dude. This guy, okay, I got to come with better questions next time. Nice Google search there, trying to keep it down there. But
okay,
yeah.
hold on 1 second. Just so you can see this, okay? Obviously, you see my hands. You haven't heard any typing, right? You can hear me type. That's exactly how far I got into looking this up.
Yeah, it's probably one of your 5 monitors over there, and your hands were probably somewhere down in your pants. But here we are. So no. But I had to throw that out at you. Overall, though, bro, I truly believe no. Do they make the playoffs this coming year? No, but I do think I do give them a ton of credit for what they did last year. I love that their head coach didn't leave. I think that is awesome dedication to the school, man. And I think they're going to be good. He just doesn't have a crazy great record before that 10-2 year. That was kind of is that an outlier? You know, that happens sometimes. I think they're going to be competitive within that conference, but Cincinnati is always pretty relevant. Central Florida, we've known over the years, even my boy down there at one time coaching. I do think that it's going to be tough, man. And they did have a hell of a year, 12-2, man. I would die as a Nebraska fan for a 12-2 year. So.
Yeah, here's the reality of that situation there, Chris. Like you said, the only reason why I thought that was because I remember Sewanee. I don't even think they are playing football at this. I know they're not playing football at this level anymore. They were one of the founding members of the SEC back in the day. So just an assumption. I know Tulane's out there in Nolans, so they like to get down a little bit.
Hell of a guess, though. Hell of a guess. I'll give you that.
I just was going off of it. I was like, well, it's either that or the Big 8 or some crazy shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's the reality of it. They bring back, and we talk about this a lot. I like it when teams bring back their quarterbacks. Okay. I like it when you can bring back, now they lost, I think, 2 of their better receivers, but they also bring back 2 talented receivers. They bring in some really solid players in the transfer portal. I mean, they quietly had a really good transfer portal. They got players from the likes of Northwestern, Texas A&M, LSU. Okay, they've even brought in, if I'm not mistaken, they even got a 4-star player in their recruiting class. These guys are quietly bringing back some sneakily good players here. Here's the reality of the situation. I think they could run the table. They proved last year that they could play with USC. Now USC didn't have a whole hell of a lot to play for there towards the end of the year, and they were
Caleb
able to
Williams
knock.
did play in that fucking game though.
Yeah, they did, and they won a shootout. I think they can if Willie Fritz can pull off a very Luke Fickell, who you're very, very fond of.
I am.
Well, Luke Tickle over there at oh Lord, he's at Cincinnati. Now he's jumped ship over at Wisconsin. If they can pull off a season like Cincinnati had back a couple years ago with Desmond Ridder and some of those guys, man, Michael Pratt could be the next Desmond Ridder.
Yep.
I'm not saying that they win anything of note this year. I'm not saying that they go to the playoffs and they beat a perennial team like Ohio State or Michigan or Alabama or Georgia or anybody like that. That hell no, that's not going to happen. But just to be in that position, to put your program, to run the gauntlet, to do everything right, and to be a top 4 team at the end of the year, I mean, it could happen. I mean, look at TCU last year. We didn't think, I mean, arguably, if I probably pulled you before the TCU game and said, who do you think wins, TCU or Michigan? You probably would have told me Michigan all day. Not even close.
No, I was firmly standing on that. Or firmly on that one. 100%, dude. That's funny you say that. So that's why I was kind of stuttering there. Like, what are the percentage? What percentage do you think, then, to give you a question here, do you think Tulane makes the playoffs this year? Like, what percentage? Like 5, 10, 15, 25, 30? What do you think?
Well, I haven't looked,
guy, you know.
I haven't looked at this yet. So let's take a look at their schedule, because I can guarantee you right now we are not probably going to do a Tulane schedule roster record prediction, right? So I can just confidently tell you what I'll do. Off the top of the dome, I would probably go with, I give them a, let's see. They start, hold on one second. I would say off the top of the dome, like right now, I could probably go with like a 60% chance
of them making the playoffs.
Well, I mean, if they have an easy schedule and supposedly you're returning in like a guy that could be a draft pick next year at quarterback, and you bring in some 4-star players and some guys that played at some major D1 schools, man. I mean, and you're playing in that that conference. I mean, why would you not?
To make the playoffs, so top 4?
Well, that's a little bit much. I mean, okay, let me walk it back a little bit. I mean, what would you say, like Georgia, or let me say this, what would you say like Michigan or Ohio State's chances are to make the playoffs next year?
Michigan or Ohio State, like I've been saying, and I like I said, I hold my wiener on this one. I think that game comes down to that game. That whoever wins that game is going to be in the playoff next year. That's 100% guarantee. I'm saying that right now on air. I know you're sitting there looking around thinking I'm crazy, but I think whoever wins that game is definitely in the playoffs. So I mean, I could say 50-50 on that game, right? I do. I truly believe between those two teams in the Big Ten. Yeah, I do. Because one of those teams is going to be undefeated at the end of the year. And they're getting in. Tulane, to me, I think they would have to do run the table. You got their schedule pulled up right there. Yeah, they can run that. They don't play the Cincinnati, the Central Florida. So, yeah, they might. There's another chance they might be undefeated as well. But I see a team maybe like a Bama, Tennessee, your boys from Georgia, one-loss teams getting that nod over a team that's undefeated. I truly believe that, Christian. Maybe you disagree with me, obviously, but I truly believe that. So I give Tulane, I'll give you my answer. I say they got maybe a 30 or 40%. I'll say 30. I'll stick with that.
I'll walk it down. a little bit. Because like if you think, okay, like right now, Georgia, I think Georgia probably has the best chances. I think they have a 70% chance to make it back to the playoff, right?
Right.
If we're talking about that, I think you can look at a team like Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, some of those teams. I think you give them maybe a 60% chance, right, of making it back there. I think then you look at some of the other schools, the Clemsons, some of these other schools out there, maybe Notre Dame, maybe you give them Notre Dame. That's a little crazy, but you give some of those schools like a 50 or 40% chance. Go ahead.
No, not to interrupt you, but like, I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, obviously only 4 teams can make it, right? And that really narrows it down, but I really, truly believe that the Big Ten is going to get somebody out of there in that Final Four, right? somebody from the SEC, absolutely, if not 2 teams. But I'll say Georgia right now. If I had to go, we can change our outlook on this. This is just right now. This is early, man. I mean, this is really early, but I think like Georgia makes it back. I think the winner of Michigan and Ohio State, I am going to take Michigan right now. I know we're not trying to get into projections and shit like that, but I think a team like Clemson could be back. I think they're definitely going to be better. And I would even say a team from the Big 12. You know what I mean? You can't rule out USC either out of the pack. So I just see it like even if Tulane does run this gauntlet here, which I think is a joke. I mean, a lot of those teams on there I don't think are very good. So other than maybe Ole Miss, I just don't see like how they would get in. They would have to be undefeated, win their conference, and then you'd have to have kind of what happened this year, you know, a 2-loss team where everybody thought Alabama should have been in over TCU, and TCU proved a lot of people wrong with that win over Michigan.
So then let me ask you this. You bring up a solid question here. You bring up a really solid question. Ole Miss. Let's keep it here. If Ole Miss played USC last year, who wins that game?
Neutral field?
Yeah.
USC.
And Tulane beat USC last year on neutral field. So
agreed.
I mean, I think when oh Lord, hold on one second. They play at home against Ole Miss.
Yeah.
You don't see that often now, do you?
No, you don't, which is kind of, man, that is weird. God, you bring up a really good point there. Yeah, a lot of those teams will be paying them to come play them.
Right. So that's a good sign right there for a program. Here's my take on this, and this is what I think. I think when I look at it from this standpoint, I put a hat on and I say, okay, they beat a team that obviously should beat this. Now, college football is weird as fuck, where they'll probably like beat Ole Miss, but then like lose to Rice or somebody crazy like that, right? Yep. To me, I look at this and I say, looking at this schedule, their season comes down to this game right here, September 9th. Versus Ole Miss at home. If you beat them and you run the rest of that, then you have a really solid chance at running the table there. If you lose that game, there is not a prayer in hell that you have to make it to the playoffs.
No, I agree. Here's the great thing. If they do, let's say hypothetically, if they somehow beat Ole Miss, right? And Ole Miss ends up finishing fairly solid in the SEC, that's more credibility to push. That'll be the game that pushes them into the playoffs over a team, for example, a 1-loss team, Ohio State or Michigan, right? Or somebody in the ACC or maybe even an SEC team, right? Outside of Ole Miss. I could see that. Yeah, you're not, I it's not a hot take, but I just, goddamn, man. I mean, Tulane, it's not that I don't, like I said, they are returning a starting quarterback. I'm a big advocate of bringing back a quarterback. Bring back your head coach after a 10 or 12-2 season, man. That's fucking impressive. It really is. So, and you beat USC last year. I'm not saying that they're no scrub for a team. It's just to do it again. It's tough, bro. But I mean, just like trying to win a back-to-back, as a national, championship team. Look at your boys, man. That's only been done a couple times.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it really has. I mean, the three-peat, and I said this very early on. I didn't like their chances. I mean, I think Georgia has a puncher's chance. I mean, obviously they've got a better chance than just about anybody else out there to run the table. But yeah, like I said, I think Tulane has a very fair shake at making it to the college football playoff, just because I feel like at that level, sometimes. And it's all relative. I know the thought pattern is, but you're not putting Georgia in that same position. You're not putting Alabama in that same schedule.
True.
You're putting a team that is kind of around the same as a lot of those guys. They probably have a better quarterback than just about everybody they're going to play. They probably have a little bit better talent on the outside. So the thing to me, when you look at that schedule, they're not playing Houston. They're not playing UCF. They're not playing some of these teams that could be potentially lighting the world on fire right out of the gate. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how all this shakes out. I like Tulane. I think if they kind of keep at it, I mean, there's one of two options that can happen with them. They're either going to turn into Coastal Carolina, right? And they're going to kind of fizzle down the back stretch of things, or they're going to become Cincinnati and they're going to take that next step. either way, Willie Fritz could be in for a big payday down the road. So
Yeah. I did that dedication from him, man. He's been there for quite a few years, man. That's, you look at his previous record up until then, man, it wasn't like anything crazy. They kind of came out of nowhere last year by him. Like I'm sure he got offered a ton of money to go to one of the Power 5 schools. You know what I mean? You know how that game is played. So kudos to him and coming back and obviously they're keeping their starting quarterback who had actually a really nice season. So Michael Pratt. So yeah, it definitely could happen, Christian. I think this will be one to kind of watch, you know, out throughout the year here. And that was a week 2 against Ole Miss will be a pretty big game in their landscape.